What's the real price of $1? To most folks, it's barely a snack from a vending machine, maybe half a cup of gas station coffee. But when you're broke, when every coin feels like a soldier in a losing war, $1 can be the difference between shame and survival. That was the world Emily Carter lived in. 26 years old, working endless shifts at a rundown diner called the Bluebird Grill, a place that smelled permanently of bacon grease and burnt coffee. The booths had rips patched with duct tape. The neon sign buzzed like it was on its last breath. And still, this was Emily's lifeline. She wasn't working for herself. She was working for her little sister, Grace. 16, hooked up to IV lines in a hospital room fighting a rare immune disease that insurance refused to fully cover. Bills stacked high, rent overdue, and yet Emily plastered on a smile that felt like cracked glass every day. Because if she didn't, the whole world might collapse. One Tuesday morning after the rush had slowed, Emily leaned against the counter, scrolling through another overdue notice on her phone. $2,000 past due service interruption threatened. They said it like it was cable TV, except this was her sister's medication. She shoved the phone away just as her coworker Maggie shot her a side eye. Daydream later, sweetheart. We've got company. Emily looked up, and there he was. An old man in a threadbare coat, shoulders hunched like he was carrying the weight of a lifetime. His shoes were scuffed, his gray hair unkempt, and his pale blue eyes looked tired, like someone who'd been forgotten by the world. He hovered in the doorway, almost unsure if he belonged. "Welcome to the Bluebird," Emily said, slipping into her customer voice, setting a menu down in front of him. "Coffee's fresh." He blinked as if she'd pulled him back from somewhere far away. "Coffee," he rasped, barely above a whisper. "Black." She poured it. He wrapped both shaky hands around the cup, staring into it like he could read his whole life in those dark ripples. An hour passed. Families came and went. A businessman pounded on his laptop. The old man sat there, barely sipping. When he finally finished, he patted his coat pockets, then his trousers, his face tightening with panic. I can't find my wallet," he whispered, shame flooding his wrinkles. "I thought I had a few dollars. I'll come back." From the grill, Maggie barked a laugh. "Sure you will. They all say that." Emily shot her a glare, then turned back to him. She saw it in his face, the humiliation, the fear she knew too well. It mirrored the nights she'd stared at pink eviction notices, heart-hammering. And in that moment, her own burdens faded behind his small, immediate shame. "Don't worry about it," she said softly, tearing up the check. "It's on the house." His eyes widened, startled. "No, I couldn't possibly." "It's just a cup of coffee," she said, sliding 2 crumpled dollar bills from her apron into the till. "Consider it a gift. Everyone deserves one once in a while." He stared at her for a long beat, then nodded slowly. "Thank you, my dear. You are very kind." And he shuffled out the little bell above the door, jingling as he disappeared into the rain. "You're a sucker," Maggie muttered. "That's money you don't have." Emily just looked at the empty stool. $2, it was nothing. And yet somehow it felt like everything. The next week was chaos. Calls from the hospital, rent warnings shoved under her door. Emily doubled her shifts until exhaustion was her only state of being. Then, on a Thursday lunch rush, the bell chimed. He was back. Same coat, same shuffle, same pale eyes. "Coffee, please," he rasped. Maggie rolled her eyes. "Your boyfriend's back, ready to open your wallet again." Emily ignored her, poured the cup, set it down with a tired smile. Through the rush, he sat just watching her. Watching how she handled a customer yelling about crispy bacon, how she picked up crayons for a toddler, how she leaned down to comfort an elderly regular who always ate alone. When things finally slowed, he gestured weakly. A sugar jar lay spilled across the floor, white granules sparkling under the fluorescent lights. "I'm clumsy," he stammered, face red. "My hands don't listen anymore." Emily wanted to scream. Her feet ached, her back throbbed, but she looked at his trembling hands and sighed. "It happens to the best of us," she said, kneeling to sweep up the mess. He watched her intently, eyes sharp now, piercing as if he was measuring her soul. When she finished, he laid down a pile of coins, 97 cents. "It is all I have today. I can bring the rest later." Maggie leaned on the counter, smirking. "Told you. He's milking you dry." Emily looked at the pathetic pile of change, at his worn shoes, at the eviction notice taped to her fridge in her mind. Every instinct screamed, "Say no." But instead she pushed the coins back. "You keep that. You might need bus fare. This one's on me too." For a moment his cloudy eyes cleared, sharp, intelligent. "Why?" he asked suddenly, voice stronger. She froze. "Why? What? Why do you do that?" he pressed. "You work for tips. You cannot afford to give away your earnings." Her throat tightened. Words spilled out before she could stop them. "My mom always said you don't measure wealth by what you have, but by what you can give. And sometimes a cup of coffee is more than coffee." His face softened. He gave a slow nod, like she'd just confirmed something he already suspected. Then he left. Maggie scoffed. "You're insane, Emily Carter. Certifiable." But Emily didn't feel insane. For the first time in a long while, she felt right. Days later, her world finally cracked. An eviction notice, official and cold. The hospital demanding thousands more. She sat on her couch, numb. She dragged herself to work like a ghost. That's when he came again. But this time his hands shook worse, his face drawn. "My granddaughter," he whispered. "It's her birthday today. I saved $50 for a present. I lost it on the bus. I can't show up empty-handed. Could you lend me 20? I swear I'll repay." Emily's stomach dropped. $20 might as well have been 2,000. It was gas, groceries, survival. But his eyes desperate, broken. She thought of Grace, of the fear of disappointing someone you love most. Against every rational bone in her body, she walked to her locker, pulled out her last 50. She folded 2 20s, slid them across. "Get her something special." He gaped. "I only asked for 20. She deserves more than that," Emily whispered. He reached out, clasped her wrist with surprising warmth. "Are you sure you carry the weight of the world?" Tears stung her eyes. "I'm sure." He studied her like a man seeing something holy, then tucked the bills away and said quietly, "I will not forget this, Emily Carter." And he left. For 2 days he didn't return. Maggie mocked her mercilessly. Emily felt like the world's biggest fool. Until on Saturday, a man in a tailored suit walked in, impeccable, polished eyes like a hawk. He sat in the same booth the old man had last used, ordered coffee, barely touched it. He just watched. Hours passed before he finally approached the register. "Are you Emily Carter?" His voice was deep, commanding. Her heart raced. "Yes." He slid a card across the counter. "Daniel Hughes, Senior Counsel for Sterling Global. Mr. Sterling requests a meeting with you. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Don't be late." Emily stared at the embossed letters, her hands trembling. Sterling Global, a name that echoed power and wealth. It made no sense. Unless... The next morning she stood before Sterling Tower, a skyscraper piercing the clouds. Inside, she was ushered up a private elevator to the 75th floor. When the doors opened, her breath caught. An office bigger than her entire apartment. And behind the desk, him. The old man. Transformed. The shabby coat replaced with a navy suit posture, straight eyes sharp and clear. Emily's blood turned hot. "You," she whispered, fury rising. "It was you. You played me." Arthur Sterling, one of the richest men in the world, met her gaze calmly. "Yes, and you have every right to be angry. But please listen." She almost stormed out, but his voice carried the weight of sorrow. He told her about his late wife, who believed kindness was the only true measure of a person. After she died, he doubted humanity, so he disguised himself as nothing, searching for proof that goodness still existed. "When you paid for my coffee, I was intrigued," he said. "When you cleaned spilled sugar without complaint, I began to hope. And when you gave me your last $40, I knew. You restored my faith." Then he slid a document across the desk. "I've created the Isabel Sterling Foundation to aid the forgotten. I want you to lead it. Not as charity, but as purpose. Starting salary $300,000. And the foundation's first act covering Grace's care for life." Emily's breath hitched. This wasn't a prank. This was her life turning upside down. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "Yes, I accept." Within days, specialists were flown in for Grace. Rent was cleared. Emily moved into a safe apartment. She returned to the diner once to leave Maggie a cashier's check for $25,000. "Sometimes people are sharp because life was unkind to them," Emily said softly. "Maybe it's time life was kind to you." Maggie's jaw dropped. Who was he?" Emily smiled faintly. "Just a man who needed a cup of coffee." Months later, standing in her new office overlooking the city, Arthur handed her a plain ceramic mug. "Do you miss it?" "The diner." Emily sipped the bitter coffee, remembering exhaustion, fear, and one extraordinary choice. "No," she said quietly. "That $40 wasn't a loss. It was the greatest investment I ever made. And that's the lesson. Kindness isn't weakness. It isn't wasted. You never know when a small, foolishly generous act might change everything, yours, someone else's, maybe even the world's." So let me ask you, was Arthur right to test her like that? Or was it cruel beyond reason? And tell me, what's the kindest thing a stranger ever did for you?